Well, hello there, and welcome to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today we'll be looking at the ISU-122S, a rank 4 6.0 battle rating Russian tank destroyer. And as with all reviews, if there's something in particular you want to see, simulator gameplay, realistic gameplay, or just a final opinion, all those are timestamped below in the description, so feel free to click on what part of the review you want to see the most. But let's go ahead and get started with the garage portion. So the ISU family were all designed in the latter part of the Second World War. The ISU-122 was specifically brought into service in 1944. And the reason it was brought into service is because Russian designers and manufacturers were building ISU-152s. However, there was a shortage of the tubes they need to make for the guns, right? So they started saying, well, let's just get these out into combat. Let's put 122mm guns, which we have a lot of. Let's just slap those on and send this out to shoot German tanks. And that was a fairly effective strategy. The two variants we have in the game, the ISU-122S and the ISU-122, only differ realistically in their gun. Alright, the ISU-122 runs the A19, which is an unmodified gun. The ISU-122S runs the D25S, which is a modified A19. Now, what did they do in terms of modifications? First off, the most noticeable one from the exterior is they added a muzzle brake onto the front. But more importantly, Russian designers added a semi-automatic breech to the ISU-122S's gun, the D25S. That was important because it meant now with 4 crew members, they could achieve a far better rate of fire than the ISU-122 and the A19 gun when they had 5 crew members. So basically, you could use 1 less crew member and still achieve a much better rate of fire. Now, in the game, both tanks have 4 crew members, but in real life, the ISU-122 had a 5th crew member who doubled as an extra loader. The ISU-122S could be run with either 4 or 5 crewmen. 2 loaders did speed up the process. However, it wasn't necessary, and using only 4 crew was perfectly acceptable. Now, in most respects in the game, other than the gun and the rate of fire, these tanks are basically the same. The ISU-122 will probably have its own review someday, but for the moment I want to focus on the ISU-122S. As I previously said, it's a rank 4 tank at a 6.0. In terms of mobility, this tank is solid. It's not a speedster, but it's certainly not that slow in a straight line. 46-ton machine, 520 horsepower engine, 2,200 RPM, 38 km/h top speed. Now that's a whole bunch of numbers that I lumped together into one grouping because it's common across the IS series of tanks. The IS-2, for example, at this same battle rating at rank 4, these are the same stats it has, other than the fact it's 2 tons lighter, so its power to weight ratio is a little better. However, it's within the ballpark, so in a straight line, the IS and the ISU tanks are quick. When they have to turn, it's a little bit of an issue because you just lose so much RPM when you try and turn, and these tanks don't recover that all that well. It's a different story with the medium tanks. They have good power to weight ratios and they really just churn ground. But the ISUs and the IS series, they struggle a little bit more. They are based all off the same chassis. This machine can climb a 41-degree slope, which doesn't come into play that often, but when it does, I'm sure it matters. I haven't run into a situation where it's all that important. Turret rotation speed, it doesn't have a turret. I think they're referring to how fast the gun moves in its arc. And the big thing to remember about Russian tank destroyers is their arc isn't that big because of how big the breech is. You only can turn it so much inside the tank. So the rotation speed is fine. That's perfectly adequate. I mean, usually you don't have to move it that far anyway, so it's going to still be on target. The big issue though is it doesn't move that far. The extremes of the edges of its arc are really small compared to a lot of tanks, so you have to move the whole hull to shoot at a target who's crossing your field of fire. which can be an issue because this tank doesn't turn very fast, and now all of a sudden you have to reacquire the target, you know, get your guns settled and things like that. So that can be a little bit of an issue. It kind of pushes this tank to a more second line play style, which is sort of what all the ISUs want to do. In terms of gun depression, it's 3 degrees of gun depression, not very good. However, that's standard for Russian tanks. So you should be used to that by now, and once you're used to it, yeah, it'll fail you every once in a while, but you're kind of ready for that. You understand that the gun depression is going to be an issue. Gun elevation, 22 degrees, solid. I mean, it's better than the Germans, but as long as you can elevate the gun enough to hit what you're trying to shoot, excess gun elevation doesn't really matter. So if you're trying to engage a target at, I don't know, 1,600 meters, you have enough gun elevation to do that, which is what you're looking for. So after those statistics, let's talk about the armor, because the armor I think is a key note with the ISU series of tanks. Pull up the armor chart. All right, the hull armor, 90 millimeters at the front. All right, on the upper casement. The lower plate here is 90 millimeters. This is 60 millimeters. Now it is constructed at 67 degrees, so it's actually thicker than, it's effectively thicker than the lower plate and the upper casement. The big thing to note is, even though this is 90 millimeters of armor, which is okay, it is basically flat. All right, constructed at a 29 degree angle. That's not enough to protect 90 millimeters of armor. All right, the front of this tank is very vulnerable. Now with the mantlet, you have a little bit of leeway. The main difference between the ISU-122S and the ISU-122 is the gun mantlet's a little bit different. Now, your mantlet is 100 millimeters thick, all right, and then you have the sides of the mantlet, which are 90 millimeters, but they're sloped in such a way where they're actually really, really thick. But the mantlet is only 100 millimeters. You can penetrate, and it's not abundantly clear if there's any armor behind it. See what I mean? It looks like there might be, but the gun does have to go through, and I have been knocked out by someone shooting directly into the mantlet and the shell penetrating the crew compartment through there. So the mantlet is your thickest armor. However, it may not save you. With long 88 millimeter guns, it is difficult for this tank to withstand multiple hits. More often than not, the first hit you take disables your driver and your gunner, and then the next shell comes in before you have a chance to really react, and it just knocks you out. This tank does not like to be shot. No tank likes to be shot, but there are tanks that are better at receiving shells than others, and the ISU-122S and all the ISUs are in this boat. That's why quite frankly, it has a 122 millimeter gun firing really, really fast, but it's only a 6.0 battle rating, right? The ISU-152 has a very slow firing gun, and it's at a 6.7 battle rating, if I'm not mistaken. We can quickly go look. 6.7 battle rating, I was right. And it's a rank 5 machine. That should tell you something about durability. Durability really is an issue. These are second line tank destroyers and assault guns. They really don't want to get hit. That's the IS-4s, the IS-3s, the IS-2s. That's their job. That's not the ISU's job. So from the front, the armor isn't, quite frankly, it isn't respectable. It's mediocre. It's almost to the point where I would rather it be 40 millimeters thick. The reason being that most of what you're going to see is going to penetrate you anyway. Might as well make it thinner so that you can go faster. You know, same argument I had with the ISU-152. If the armor isn't going to protect me, let's make it thin so that we can get more out of the engine and go faster and flank and get to positions where the enemy won't expect us, or we can get to favorable positions quicker. However, you know, this is how much armor the tank had, 90 millimeters, which would be effective, I guess, against Panzer IVs and Panzer IIIs and things like that, but not against Tigers and King Tigers. Sides of the hull, or the sides of the upper casement, and to some degree the hull, 75 millimeters, 90 millimeters on the lower hull. Obviously the back is, the back, 60 millimeters, 60, it's all 60 back here. You get shot back here, you're basically toast. Either they're going to light you on fire and disable your engine so that you can't move, or they'll just put one through the back of your head here and wreck the crew compartment. Now, this tank can benefit from angling if you're in that situation. However, you have to be aware that when you angle, this side bit here is 75 millimeters. Facing straight on, it's it's very thick because of how sloped it is. However, when you start angling, this starts to become very pinnable. This is still very pinnable, 111 millimeters. I mean, you could still just shoot it right there, but if you wanted, you could just shoot it right here. And that shell would have the same impact as shooting it through here. So this tank, it's just the best way to play this tank is to not get hit. If you get hit, a lot of times it's a serious issue. And most of the time you won't be able to return fire. Now, there are situations where the armor will save you, but usually that's not necessarily, you can't rely on that, which is critical when it comes to armor. If you can rely on the armor, you can make plays based on that. You can't really rely on the armor for this tank, so you need to play it like that. You need to play it like it's made of a little bit of paper, some paper mache. But let's talk about something about this tank that does make me happy, and that's the gun. I really enjoy the gun. It's the same gun that we've seen throughout time on Russian heavy tanks. So let's pull up the ammunition choices. You have the standard AP, 800 meters per second, muzzle velocity, 25 kilogram shell. It's a big shell. It's coming from a large caliber gun, so obviously it's going to be big. 200 millimeters penetration at 10 meters, 177 at 500, 146 at 1500, and 141 at 2000 meters. It basically means if you get the side of an enemy tank, they're toast. Right, because this is a big, powerful shell, and if you hit the side of their tank, it's going to penetrate, has plenty of penetration, and the damaging effect means it's going to blow up inside the tank and just really cause problems for everyone inside. It's the same, you have to remember this is the same gun that all the heavy tanks get, just has a little bit better rate of fire. And all the heavy tanks do fairly well against Tigers and King Tigers at range, if they can hit them. If you can land the shell on the turret, a lot of times that's good enough. Right, but obviously you want more penetration than what you have here. So you unlock the BR-471B ammunition. 207 millimeters of penetration at 10 meters, 185 at 500, 152 at 1500, and 145 at 2000. It's basically just more penetration up close and personal, but the penetration at range is basically still the same. So Tiger 2Ps are not safe from the front with this ammunition. Not really with this ammunition either, but certainly not with this one. Same muzzle velocity, 800 meters per second, 25 kilogram shell, same damaging effect, just has some better armor piercing effects. The key thing though is that it doesn't really have the penetration at very extreme ranges to deal with German armor, but in the medium range where you hope to be, you're going to be fine. So between 500 and 1000 meters, you should be fairly good to engage the front of German tanks. Because ideally, that's kind of where you want to be. You want to be behind the attacking mediums who want to be at short ranges, but not so far away that, hitting the enemy tank is going to be an issue. I really prefer to be under 1000 meters from my target, but greater than like 400 or 500 or so, just to make it slightly harder for them to hit me. But I also prefer to travel in a pack. I don't want to be alone, because when you're alone in this tank, you get circled, knocked out. It's just bad. This is a team tank. It's not a solo tank like a T-54 could be, or a IS-4, IS-3, IS-2s can be solo tanks. But this tank really needs to be with the team. HE, I've actually started to carry some HE. People have made good arguments in the past to me about why a few rounds of HE is good, and I tend to agree. HE could be really effective if the enemy's dug in a position and you need to disable them. Maybe kill them, but definitely disable them. And AP isn't getting the job done, so you throw some HE at them. That's fine. It has same muzzle velocity, so that's not an issue. Same weight of the shell. It doesn't have good penetration because it's not a particularly high caliber HE shell at this rank. But it can get the job done. You could use it to blast a Panther out of a tough position. However, I would argue that this shell could penetrate the turret, like straight up. So I don't know if it's necessarily important to have all this, some HE lying around, but why not? You know, I don't see a I don't see a bad I don't see a reason not to. I guess is the important thing. So if you want to run like maybe 3 or 4 shells of this, that's fine. You have 30 shells to work with. Vast majority needs to be this BR471B. And I say vast, I mean like 27 of 30, I think, because that's majority of the time what you want to fire, because it'll get the job done. But maybe if you're engaging at super long ranges, HE might be better, because you might get that situation where the shell explodes on the face of the turret and all the shrapnel goes through the bottom and lights the tank on fire or just blows it up. So that's fairly important. Now, all this sort of wrapped together. Obviously, from looking at the modifications, this isn't a tank I play a whole lot of. Alright? So I guess you should take this portion of the review with that sort of grain of salt, that I haven't played this nearly as much as some of the other tanks that I've reviewed in the past. Primarily because I don't necessarily think it brings something different to the table. However, it is important to review it because, I mean, you will be grinding this if you want the ISU-152. But by playing it how much I have, I do feel like I have enough of a opinion about this tank, and I have played the ISU-152 a fair amount, so I have a good idea of how this tank should be played. So let's go ahead and skip on to the replays. Something I completely forgot to do when I was doing the original garage review is I didn't look at the inside layout at all, because I'm a big noob. But anyway, this is the layout of the ISU-122S. You have the driver sitting in the front, you have the gunner behind him, the commander behind him, and the loader sitting over here. And the sides and back of the thing is made of ammo, except the commander. He's not made of ammo. But ammo, 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 ammo. Fuel tank. Fuel tank. You know, radiator, engine, fuel tank. The main issue this tank has is that getting hit in the front and getting hit really anywhere is just really bad. A lot of times where people will shoot you is to the right of the gun right here. And that's true with most tanks, honestly, now that I think about it. But your driver, your gunner, and the commander are all right here. So a lot of times when you get hit in the front, your driver and your gunner get knocked out. Because you think about it, this armor isn't that thick, it's 90 millimeters. Long 88s have no problem with that. Long 75s have no problem with that. So the shell will undoubtedly penetrate, will almost certainly get the driver, will almost certainly get the gunner, and then will probably explode inside the upper casement. In which case there's ammo, 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 commander, loader, gun breach, fuel tanks. There's all kinds of stuff it can really hurt. So that kind of plays into more the idea that this tank needs to be that long range, or that, well, medium to long range support tank, less so the up close and personal assault gun, because it just doesn't have the armor for it. It has the gun to do that job, but it doesn't have the armor. So I would advise you to put yourself in a position where you don't have to be the front line. Let the T-44s and the T-34-85s and the IS-2s and the IS-1s of the world deal with those enemies close up, personal. You don't bother with it. Your gun is much more effective at medium range because you can, as long as you can get the shells on target, you can still penetrate enemy tanks, and it gives you that protection of the farther away you are, the more difficult the shot is. So, and that can really help you out. But if you were fighting this thing, I mean, the back of the tank is flammable things. The sides are basically made of ammo. If you have the side of the upper casement, just shoot it. Just shoot it, because it's like all of this is just, it's just bad for the tank. It's not that thick. This is thin. Shoot it right through, right above the driver's hatch, right here. Anywhere in here will get the job done. And it's not that thick, so you can, basically every gun this tank sees can penetrate it at any range. So that's a little bit of an issue. But anyway, let's continue on to the replays. So here's the first replay. It's a simulator battle on Kuban. And this is actually the second time I'm recording this voiceover, because my video editing software crashed, which is always lovely. But, watching again is never bad. So, This game I'm going to try and demonstrate to the best of my ability how this tank, in my mind, is meant to be played. Not necessarily how it always needs to be played, but how it's kind of designed to be played. I get up onto this little ridge here, and I'm going to scan their sort of side of the map, the normal pathways their tanks will take, and look for an easy opening shot. I'm not going to find one initially, just because the enemy, I think, were a little more careful than that. A majority of them actually go into the southern part of the map, which is unfortunate for, well, ultimately for them, but, you know, would have rather they all came here so we could shoot each other. But first victim is an AI. He got the good news, that's for sure. Sprayed his crew there. But now I'm going to move up to another little favorite position of mine. But I'm only moving up mainly because my team has moved up, which puts me in a position of it's safe for me to move up, if that makes any sense. It's important when you're in this tank to kind of evaluate positions and have an idea of what's a safe place to go to and what's not. Now, a Tiger P shows up, and I get really, really lucky. I hit his gun, which is, you know, fine. That's good. He's going to back up in plenty of time. His shell hit the top of my tank and didn't do anything to me, which is great. Because if his shell had gone where he wanted it to go, I undoubtedly would have met a very untimely end. Bad news would have been delivered, plenty of it. And right there I told my teammates that I hit his gun so that they know his gun is likely disabled. So they can go ahead and push around and spread the good news of our Lord and Savior, I guess, Russian tanks. I don't know. The good news is being spread regardless. I saw a tank destroyer on the map, but it is just a Stug 3 AI, so he's not really anything to worry about. I'm more interested of being over here to support the medium tanks who are pushing forward. A medium tank and a heavy tank, rather. That are pushing forward to eliminate that Tiger P, who is currently on fire thanks to the medium. Now there is a medium tank spotted here, a Panther to be specific, and I'm initially looking for the obvious places where he could be lined up on me. He's not. He's actually completely not oblivious. He probably knows I'm here, but he's not paying attention or not caring enough to this side of the map. And I was hoping to get a cheeky, you know, over the hill shot on that guy, but I'm gonna need to move forward. And he starts to move behind that little bunker there, but he doesn't really go far enough behind. And he receives a healthy dose of good news to the ammo rack. Now at this point, this position's kind of outlived its usefulness. I mean, as you can see, we have we have our tanks pushing in from the northern part, starting to move down into the southern part. So with tanks being cleared over here, it would be a good idea to go ahead and move to the middle ridge and start supplying cover fire to our guys down in the southern part of the map, where a majority of their team actually is. They have a bunch of heavy tanks down there and a Panther, I believe. So I start to make my way over there. The better way to do that would have been to drop down off the ridge to my left and then move over here, just in case. You know, if you have the opportunity to play cautiously, you probably should, just because of how, especially in this tank, it's easy to be knocked out. And for me, this is always a little frustrating, but there's not really a good position on Kuban that I would want to be in that gives you good line of sight onto this part of the map, just because of how you're at a higher elevation and there's trees and stuff, and just makes life a little more difficult for you. But we are going to push up over onto this little ridge and try and spot out these heavy tanks to knock them out and help us win the game. Now I know they're down in this part of the map, but I believe they're on the other side of the hill, and honestly moving down there and being on their side of the hill is really not appealing to me, especially not in this tank given its armor profile. So I'm just kind of looking, I'm trying to spot variations. He was actually the Panther was actually below the my line of sight. And there's still a heavy tank there, which is why I fired a speculative shot. It would have been lucky if that one had hit, mainly because I had no idea where he was. But he got knocked out the same either way. And now I'm moving forward because, as far as I can tell, this portion of the map is very safe for me to move on. And there aren't many enemy players left. There goes a heavy tank. So that's one less player. And I believe it's just this medium tank now, who I have spotted right there, down a little bit lower. I saw him fire, which is what kind of keyed me in. Got to get a little bit more gun depression, and my first shot's going to go low, which is unfortunate, because if you hit that guy in the turret, more than likely it knocks him out. But I don't think I'm the biggest issue he's going to have, so I'm not that convinced he's going to shoot at me. I also have this like wood thing in the way. I don't think he'll shoot through that. I'm certainly going to. I'm trying to confirm exactly where he is. But teammates are going to take care of that guy before I get a chance to. And we're going to go on to win this game kind of handedly. But the importance of this game isn't really the stat line, it's more of the play style. It's important for you to remember in this tank that when you're driving it, you're not that durable. You know, I got very lucky when the Tiger II didn't just knock me out from the start. The layout of this tank really doesn't lend itself to being hit, which is obviously kind of a downside for a tank because normally tanks get shot. But that's why this is a second line tank. It's more of the medium range sniper. It carries the punch needed to break through sturdy enemy defenses. And with the good rate of fire on this 122mm gun, it can really dish out the pain, but it needs an opportunity to do so, and sometimes that opportunity is more difficult to come by. So just something to keep in mind when you're playing this tank. So let's go ahead and move on to the realistic battle replay, shall we? So here we are in the realistic battle. This is a battle on Ash Valley, and I'm driving the ISU-122S, obviously, because it's the ISU-122S review, of course. Now, I decided to come to the southern ridge even though I knew the cap circle would be on the north. Why did I do that? Honestly, I'm not entirely certain with the logic because, I mean, I know how it turns out. It's kind of iffy. But my thought process at the time was that I'm in a medium range support tank. I don't want to go around the cap circle because if I go around the cap circle, I'm now engaging at closer ranges, which I don't have the armor really to do so. I would much rather be able to support my team by securing a large portion of the map and then allowing the rest of the team, the mediums and such, to move into the cap circle. What's a little unfortunate is actually just none of the enemy team are up here. They're actually all in either the middle or the northern part of the map, which means they're going to cap first, which means it puts me in a position where my tank now has to be an aggressive machine, and it's not that much of a good idea in my opinion. But we've confirmed that there's no one up here. So at this point, ideally what's happening is all of our guys are either rushing through their spawn to go to the cap circle, or they're dropping off the ridge to go move towards the cap circle. And I think if we had done that, I think the outcome would have been very different. But the enemy are going to cap, and the 3 enemy tanks I'm going to see, 1 is going to be in the middle, 2 are going to be around the cap circle. And the outcome of this game is kind of interesting. You get put in a situation of you do if you don't, you're damned if you do it and damned if you don't. But either way, I come over to the ridge just to be sure that there's not anything outwardly aggressive ready to shoot me. But I tried to loop that shot actually over the rock and hit the tiger too, but the rate of fire means my next shot's going to be ready plenty of time, and he's actually going to back up and make my life a lot easier for this gun. And if you give the side of your tank to a 122mm gun, all he has to do is hit you. If he hits you, you're toast. That's just how it works. That's really how it works at this tier just in general. If you get hit, you're toast. Especially if you get hit in the side, you're toast. Hit in the front, you're not necessarily toast. But from the side, absolutely. A little bit of bowl maneuver here. We almost flipped the thing. But anyway, now it's important to rush over to the cap circle. We have a T-44 who is moving over there, but he's going to get stopped up by a Panther, a Tiger 1, and a Tiger 2P. So he really needs help. Ideally, we would have an IS-2, two T-44s, and myself moving in. However, currently it's just me. So I'm going to get over there and do the best I can with my gun, the fast rate of fire, and if I get knocked out, I get knocked out. We're going to lose. If it's kind of like if I don't come over here and start shooting everybody and put myself in a position to be shot, we lose. Which, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you have your tank at the end of the battle if you lost, you know. I'd much rather have been knocked out trying to win than lose and survive. So I'm going to push over this hill. He's called out the tiger, and my first inclination is to shoot the tiger, mainly because it was the first thing I spotted. So, and we just need to kill these guys. So I go for the tiger first, and he obligingly gives me his side. So the first shell goes in, wrecks his crew, and knocks him out. The Panther is going to decide to start backing up and back around the corner, but he's going to do it way too slow for the rate of fire of this gun. I'm not sure if he saw me coming, but it would seem that he saw that I was on my way and decided to start backing up. But he gets a good helping of the good news. Now there is a Tiger P below me, which is a really big issue for me. I need the T-44 to come down here and deal with this guy so we can both run into the cap circle. But the T-44 is not going to be able to immediately. I mean, because he's pointing his gun at me. If I go over the hill, he knocks me out. If I don't go over the hill, we lose. But at this point, we're going to lose anyway. So I decide to just YOLO over to the hill. I shoot him, but doesn't do anything, and you know, we lose. A little unfortunate. But it was kind of like I was trying to play to win, but I needed the T-44 to knock him out for us to be in a position to win. Because if I go over and get knocked out, it doesn't really do anything for us. Even though I would have much rather have been knocked out in a loss. But, I mean, either way. Let's move on to the last replay. So in this simulator battle on Kuban, I'm going to kind of demonstrate what not to do in this tank. This was relatively early in the process of gathering these clips, and quite frankly, I was playing a little bit too fast, but it's kind of amusing what happens. So, you know, I guess it's not all lost, of course. But I'm coming up over here. There's going to be a rather pitched battle for the southern part, the northern part rather, of this map. We got T-34-85 with me. And we have a couple heavy tanks that are pushing forward more into the middle of the map, less so into this part of the map. But I'm going to come up over here to a position where I can sort of overlook, much like I did on the previous simulator replay, where I was in a position to overlook their main routes to the I guess the combat area, but this time it's from the other side. This is the other spot I like to come to. It's less concealed, it's rather out in the open, but it is kind of the best I can do on this side of the map. But it doesn't appear that there's anyone over here, which is unfortunate. There should be. It would make life more fun if there was. So I start to kind of inch forward, just looking for angles to spot people. And another ISU-122 gets the first strike on an AI. Can't tell if we've spotted anyone yet, but someone just got wrecked by a Jagdpanther, premium Jagdpanther. So I start kind of scanning, looking for where would that shell have come from. So obviously it'd be much better if I knew where the enemy are. And the T-34-85 who was nearby me just got wrecked as well. And there goes an IS-2. We are losing tanks very quickly here. So I decided that I need to move forward because I need to start spotting people and killing them so they can stop killing my teammates. And I come over here, and the first thing I notice, there's a medium tank over there, but I'm very wary of my left. I notice the AI is shooting over there, which would indicate that there's enemy tanks over there. So enemy tanks get spotted, so I immediately turn, manage to bounce a hit, I don't know why, and I see the Panther. I go for a shot on the cupola because I felt like it was the best chance to penetrate, and the commander does get his head blown off, but it would have been better just to try and penetrate the gun manlet, and worst case scenario, knock out the gun. And now the Panther is calling artillery fire on me, so I keep moving forward to get out of the artillery fire. But I am kind of in a very rough position at this point. Jagdpanther comes over, puts a shell into me. I fire at him, but thanks to the sloping and angling and weirdness of his armor, he manages to bounce the shell. A little unfortunate. And now there's a Panther coming down the hill at me as well. And I get tracked. So that's an issue. So I start turning. I'm just slowly turning here. And the Panther is going to just keep going right around me, shooting me. But the Jagdpanther kind of leaves me for dead, ignores me, and I put one through the back of his tank. And at this point, I'm not quite sure what to do. I start, again, rotating and trying to just be annoying to this Panther, but then I realize, wait, there's another Jagdpanther right over there. I should shoot him. I'm trying to kill tanks, right? And this Panther is really making mincemeat of trying to kill me. So I put one through the front of the Jagdpanther. Well, now it's just me and this Panther, and this T-34-85 has disabled him or set him on fire, or no, not even set him on fire, or something. But then just kind of runs away. I don't know if he realized that I was disabled. Maybe he thought he was dead. Because this Panther is not dead. I'm pretty sure he's not. I'm trying to figure out how to get my gun on this guy. So eventually I just say, well, I'm going to turn into him. So cover your eyes, kids. We're going in. We're inserting our gun. And once it's fully inside, we will blast a hole in the enemy. And we set him on fire. Right. And he's going to get killed by the T-34-85. But now I need to sit here and repair. And you can actually see the hole in his ass. It's nice. I need to sit here and repair for about a minute. Now, this is definitely a do as I say, not as I do moment. That was really dumb. It's a bad situation to be in an ISU. But it was pretty amusing. So I'm just going to sit here and repair, then I'm going to get quickly knocked out by an enemy tank. So let's skip that nonsense and move on to the final opinion. Alright, so opinion time. What do I think of the ISU-122S? I think it's a good supporting second line tank. It has the same issues that the ISU, all the ISUs actually have. Their armor isn't up to the task. Even if you angle and things like that, there's just too many weaknesses about the armor. And it's just too large of a tank to really be effective in the more of the assault gun role. It needs to have tanks in front of it that want to get shot so it can stay back and not get shot. So that's a key thing to remember in this tank. You won't live long if you're the center of attention. All right? You need, T-44s and IS-2s. They need to be the center of attention while you sit back and blast the enemy with plenty of good news. Barrel muzzles full loaded with good news. And that's kind of my opinion about this tank. The armor isn't effective. The gun is really effective, and the speed is meh. In straight line it's good, but in turning you lose. You go to a standstill. So I think the key thing to remember with this tank is don't be the first one in. Be the second or the third guy in, because you have the gun to one-shot all the tanks you'll see, and you have the penetration values to do it at medium range, which is where you're going to find yourself most of the time. However, you really don't want to be at close range because you don't have the traverse, you don't have the speed, you don't have the engine power to really, you saw it. I got circled by a Panther until he got disabled. So it is important to remember your role, I guess. This is a support tank. It's not a upfront fighting tank. It's meant to be that. It's meant to. Well, the ISU-122S can do indirect fire and was somewhat used for indirect fire, but the ISU-152 is much better at that. But the big thing to remember is don't be the first line. Be the second line or the third line, because then you'll live longer and you'll be able to really affect the outcome of the game. So I hope this review was helpful. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please put them in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to answer and reply to those. And yeah, as always, I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.